All right, so the recipe that I chose to share with you guys today is the chive and cheese curd scone recipe. Let's see here. It's in the spring section of the cookbook, so um, I wanted to pick something from the spring section just because we're in the middle of winter right now, and I'm kind of looking forward to the spring. And yeah, it's a nice easy one as well. So it's a recipe that we use at the cafe. You can do a sweet version of the recipe if you want. This is a more savory version. Um, I'm going to start off by, well, I'm actually going to use jalapenos in the recipe because I couldn't find any chives right now. But by all means, if you have chives, use the chives. I'm gonna sub out jalapenos. It's basically gonna work the same, but I'm gonna start off just by cutting up a few jalapenos here. Um, in the spring at the grounds, we have a really beautiful patch of chives that come out, and that's kind of the signal that spring is fully happening, and things are starting to bloom, and these little chive sprouts will poke out of the ground, um, and that's definitely where the inspiration for this recipe came from. And I went out to go buy some chives because, well, we don't have any fresh chives right now, so I went out to Coleman's today, couldn't find any, and I saw some jalapenos, and I just decided to substitute those instead. And our whole cookbook is really meant to uh, make the most of fresh local produce. But if you ever are having a hard time finding ingredients, I definitely support substituting things, similar things, um, that you can find and do have available.
Nick,
So, yeah,
we have a question here. It wants to know if they could substitute both.
yeah, you could definitely have both if you have some jalapenos or even green peppers or green onion, like scallions would be another good substitute if you don't have chives on hand. Any green herbs, honestly, any green vegetable or herb is a good substitute.
What
Um,
about like cilantro?
Cilantro,
I
that's a
don't like
weird one.
cilantro myself.
I'd probably stay away from the cilantro. But if you did want to do cilantro, then I would maybe go in the direction of adding like some taco seasoning or something to the mix and make it like like a Tex-Mex type scone. That could work. I don't think there's anything that would taste bad in these scones, honestly. So if you want to put cilantro in it, I'd say, maybe you could use some diced up chorizo sausage or something like that with, um, yeah, with like a taco spice, and I don't know, maybe you could dip them in sour cream or something after salsa. I don't know. That could be fun, but I've never tried that, but I like it. It's a good idea. All right, so I've got my jalapenos diced up here, and if you are using chives, just set them aside in a bowl. The next thing I'm going to do here is measure out some of the dry ingredients. So the recipe calls for flour, salt, sugar, baking powder, and baking soda. So those are all the dry ingredients. So I'm going to go ahead and measure those out right now. So We're going to start with 1 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour. That's about 3/4 there. This recipe is pretty forgiving. Um, the measurements don't have to be measured down to the last gram or anything like that. Like, you can kind of just go with the flow. And if your dough ends up too loose, you can add a bit more flour. If it's too dry, you can add a bit more milk at the end. Okay, so salt, we're gonna do 1 tablespoon of salt. So salt going in with the flour, sugar, half a tablespoon. Baking powder, 2 1/4 teaspoons. And then baking soda, half a teaspoon. So those dry ingredients, I'm just gonna mix them around a little bit with my hand in the bowl. Set aside right there. Okay, next, we're gonna get the butter ready. So I'm going to grab some butter and a cheese grater. And it's 2/3 of a cup of butter.
So is butter always better?
Always, especially in recipes like this, butter is pretty necessary, because when you sub something like margarine, it doesn't give you the same texture in the final product. So with this recipe, the butter kind of creates these little pockets, that make the scone really light and fluffy in the end. And margarine doesn't give you that same texture. It's going to be more flat at the end. And butter just tastes amazing. So, all right, so 2/3 of a cup. I'm going to go about there. There's my butter. And using a grater to grate the butter, it just kind of speeds up the process a little bit. You could use a knife just to dice it into little cubes if you don't have a cheese grater on hand. So I'm just grating it into. It almost looks like cheese, grated cheese, but that's what you're looking for when you prepare the butter. Okay. So I've got my butter grated there.
So Carolee put in the chat goat butter and goat cheddar with gluten-free flour, almond milk
Yeah.
vinegar for buttermilk.
Yeah, that would work. Yep. Yep, definitely. Sounds good to me. So I'm gonna put the butter into the dry ingredients now. So I've got my bowl here with my flour mixture, the butter on top, and I'm just gonna fold in the flour and the butter together and start mixing it. And I'm just getting my hands right in there. And I'm just gonna rub it together. And you still want to see little pieces of butter um, mixed in with the flour here, and that's going to create those little pockets of butter that'll make the scones really light and fluffy at the end. So when you're mixing it, you're looking for kind of like a shaggy type dough. You don't want to um, fully incorporate the butter. Like I said, you wanna keep it in little like pea-sized pieces. Okay, so this is what mine's looking like right now. Little clumps of butter mixed with the flour, and it's still a really loose mixture. It's not a dough yet, which is good. And then I am going to go ahead and add the some of the cheese curds and the jalapenos in my case, or green onions or cilantro or chives, whatever you have, you can put in. Just make sure that you use similar amounts. So the recipe called for 2 bunches of fresh chives. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't put more than, about a half a cup to a cup of um, whatever herb or vegetable you're going to use in your scones. Okay, so jalapenos. I'm just gonna put a couple of handfuls of those in, about half a cup. And then the cheese curds. I I originally, when I made this recipe, used Five Brothers cheese curds, which they're a local cheesemaker here in Newfoundland. But um, I don't know what happened, but I think they might have shut down recently. So unfortunately, it's harder to find those Bergie Bits cheese curds. So I just got Saputo brand cheese curds from the grocery store. Um, if you can't find cheese curds, you can use diced cheddar or mozzarella or Gouda, whatever cheese you have. Um, so these cheese curds, I'm just gonna make sure that they're not too big. I want to kind of have them in little I don't know, teaspoon size pieces. I'm gonna just break them up a little bit. Okay, and I'm just gonna fold the cheese curds and jalapenos into that butter mixture. And at that point, if it looks like you need to add a little bit more of the cheese or the chives, then you can. Like I said, this recipe is it's a guide. I really love when people customize things and kind of, you know, use whatever they have on hand. And add a little bit more jalapenos into mine. And next we're gonna add the buttermilk. At this point too, I'm gonna turn on my oven, start getting the oven nice and preheated. So I'm going to go to 375. And for the buttermilk, we're going to use half a cup. If you don't have buttermilk, you can use regular milk with a little bit of vinegar or lemon juice just to sour it. But the only difference is buttermilk is it's really nice and thick, so it does change the overall texture of the finished scone. And I prefer to use buttermilk. That's what we use at the cafe for a lot of our scones and biscuits and that type of recipe. So there's about half a cup there. And there's an egg in there too, so I'm gonna grab an egg. So the egg can go in with the buttermilk. Okay, now let's see. Mix the buttermilk and the egg. So I'm just gonna take a fork and kind of mix up the buttermilk and the egg together there. Okay, so now I have my buttermilk and egg mixture and my flour and cheese and jalapeno mixture. I'm just gonna go ahead and pour the wet right over. And now I'm just gonna use my hands to start mixing this into a dough. You can use a spatula at home if you want. I'm just using my hands for this one. And it doesn't take a lot of mixing. You just want to incorporate all the wet ingredients into the dry and start getting that dough formed. So it's starting to come together already. And you really want to make sure that you don't smush down the butter too much. You don't want to lose those little pockets of butter. So I'm just kind of folding it in on itself. I'm not kneading it too much or anything. I'm just kind of hand mixing it and rotating it and just making sure that all the kind of loose flour gets incorporated. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with how this is looking so far. Gonna clean my hands up and then I'll show everyone what my dough is looking like here. So that's what mine looks like so far. And next, so we've got the oven preheating. I'm gonna move my cutting board off to the side, and I'm gonna use this table to roll out the scones. I'm gonna move my book. We're going to use a little extra flour for this part too, so I'm going to grab my flour scoop. Rolling pin. Just going to wipe down any excess ingredients that got on the counter there. And then just put down some flour onto the surface there. What's this?
So
Okay.
everybody, I posted a little poll to see how often you cook dinner for your family. If you get a minute, just take a moment and answer the poll and see how often everybody cooks dinner.
All right, so I've got my scone dough there, and I kind of just have it in a circle. So I'm putting that down right on the floured counter, and I'm gonna put a little more flour on top of the dough, just so our rolling pin doesn't stick to it. And then I'm gonna go ahead and start rolling this out a little bit.
I like your rolling pin.
Thank you. It's just it's a piece of dowel, really. It's not even a rolling pin.
I remember when I was little, my mom used to use a what was it? Like an old-fashioned Coke bottle with cold water in it. She said it
Oh
made
yeah,
pie. Yeah, she said it made her pie crust flaky.
yeah, yeah. I love those old family tricks like that. It's awesome. Okay, so I've rolled it out into about half an inch thick on my cutting board there. Is there any questions at all so far about any of this?
I haven't
It's
seen
all
any
making
lately.
sense. Okay,
I think
great.
everybody's busy and they up to their elbows in scones.
Yeah, hopefully. All right, so just trying to show you guys a little bit there. That's my rolled out scone dough, and I'm just gonna go ahead and cut it. So I still have mine in a circle right now. So I'm gonna basically cut it into probably kind of like cut it like a pizza into I think about eight scones. So I'm just looking for little wedges here. So I'm cutting it into four and then cutting it into four again, just like you would with a pizza. So now we have these little laces of scone. Show you what mine's looking like there. So that's what, about the size that mine's looking like right there. If yours is a little thinner or thicker, that's perfectly fine. So I have eight of those pieces. Okay, what's next? Okay, so I'm gonna put the scones on a piece of parchment paper on a baking sheet, and then we're gonna make a quick little egg wash to brush over it, and that'll just give it kind of like a shiny uh, a shiny sheen at the end, and it'll make it look nice. So I'm gonna grab a baking sheet here.
Do you have a recommended baking sheet that you always go to?
So I'm just laying the scones on the parchment paper here now. The oven is just about up to temperature, so that's perfect. So I've got my scones laid out on my baking sheet there.
Beautiful.
Take one more egg and whisk it together with a little bit of milk in a little bowl here. Of the eggs. Oh, it's the oven.
Here in the library, we're just commenting on the fact that your kitchen is so clean.
Ha! From a distance. I do like to keep the kitchen pretty clean. That's just one of my I guess habits is I'm always cleaning up the kitchen, and drives me nuts to have it disorganized. So I have a lot of shortcuts and a lot of ways to keep the kitchen clean. So that's my territory. I feel comfortable cleaning up the kitchen as I go, and I try to just maintain it. All
So
right,
at the cafe, do you clean or do you have somebody do it for you?
Oh yeah, I clean. Like we all clean it together. We'll work together and clean it up every day. And yeah. So let's see. I don't think I have a brush on hand. I would recommend using a pastry brush if you have it, but I don't have one on hand right now, so I'm just going to use a spoon and just kind of put a bit of the egg wash on top of each scone and just rub it around on it. Okay, almost done. Perfect. I've got all of my scones brushed with my egg wash. I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit more salt on top of each one here now. Um, got a little bit of the Newfoundland sea salt, which is really nice for finishing touches like this. So just going to sprinkle a little bit of that on top of the egg wash mixture there. All right, so that's what we're looking at here now. Batch of scones ready to go in the oven. I'm just going to put them right on the middle rack, 375 degrees. Those take probably, let's say in the book here, 12 to 18 minutes. So I'll set a timer for 12 and see how long they need, if they need any more after that. Depends on your oven. Some people's ovens run hotter than others, or if you have a convection oven, it might take a little less time or more, depending. So what my scones are looking like there now. They're nice brown. Yeah.
We don't have smell-o-vision, so what does it smell like?
Definitely smell like, since I put jalapenos in mine, they have a kind of like aromatic, peppery, a little bit of a spicy smell on the nose, and then just like, when you bake anything with a lot of butter in it, you kind of get that overwhelming smell of butter in the air, caramelized butter. And that's definitely what's coming through right now. I'm gonna actually pick up one of these scones and bring it over. See if I can kind of show it on camera without.
Oh, those look perfect.
So yeah, you know the um, the bottom's nice and golden brown. The cheese is melted and it's kind of caramelized on the outside.
Looks
So
wonderful.
these are great for just to serve with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, a little bit of butter on the side. You could make it into a sandwich if you wanted to. Um, I mean, you can if you make the dough, you can actually if you don't want to bake them all off at the same time, you can freeze some of the dough and bake them from frozen. If if say if you make a batch of 8 scones and you only want to eat 2 of them, and you want to save the rest for later, say for the weekend morning or something, you can just freeze them on the baking sheet, and then when after they're frozen, take them off of the sheet and put them in a container or a Ziploc freezer bag, something like that. And then you can kind of just keep them in the freezer, like the raw dough, and then take them out, put them on a baking sheet, and bake them from frozen. Say on a Sunday morning or something like that, if that's what you're interested in.